All right, everybody, we're down here in the basement. I got Joe Brown with me. He is a Division II national champion in the discus in 2019, and he was a member of the U.S. Olympic team this summer at the Paris Olympic Games. So he's here training with us for the week. I'm training him virtually, and this is our first year working together. So we're super excited to get into some questions you guys had and just tell you guys a little bit more about us. What was your major?
My undergrad was general business, and then I got an MBA, master's in finance.
You have an MBA and a master's in finance?
Yeah,
Ooh, double masters.
yeah.
That's impressive. So what was the plan?
Um, for school,
Yeah, like, what was the plan after college, I guess?
I always just wanted to like own a business, so I didn't know what kind of business. I just knew I wanted to do something in business. But
Yeah,
me and my roommate at the time, we made a plan to like open up a training facility, and so I guess that was kind of the plan.
yeah.
But I was just kind of like going with the flow.
Just seeing what happens, seeing where
Yeah.
life takes me. So COVID, and then you didn't compete at all in 2020?
No.
And so then the trials, what was the story? You made the trials? Didn't you
Yeah.
get last or
Yeah, so then the trials were in 2021, and I wasn't qualified until, like, the very last throw of my last competition. I broke 60 finally, and then that throw qualified me, and I got accepted. It wasn't like the automatic standard or anything, but I got accepted, and I got last place trials. So
which like, how was that? Were you just, like, glad kinda just, like, glad to have the experience or
yeah, I mean, I was just happy to be there because 2019, I didn't even make it,
Right.
and so, like, I was just like, "Oh, this is cool," and
Yeah.
I never been to Oregon, I never been to Hayward, and so being going there for the trials for my first meet at Hayward was a pretty cool experience,
Yeah.
way different than anything else.
'Cause I think that I heard you say, like I'd watched an interview that you said that after the Olympic trials that you kind of, like, had a decision to make about, like, now what?
Yeah, cause then it was like, "What do I just keep going or, like, is it even worth it?" Like, I just got last place, I'm not even close to making it, and
Yeah,
but, like, what it took to make it was only, like, 62 that year, so I was like,
make the team.
yeah, and so I was like, "I'm not really that far away from 62." Like, I was throwing that a couple weeks before the trials, and so I was like, "I'm not that far
Yeah.
away," so but I wasn't making any money,
Right,
and,
right.
like, we weren't just, like, rolling in money at the time, so I had to, like, make a decision. Do I, like, go to work? Do I, like, work in real estate, which is what I was doing before? Or do I just, like, find a career? Or do I just keep on trying?
So, like, where were you at that point? Like, were you self-coached at that point? Like, what was going on with your training?
That point, so 2019, I had my college coach, and then he retired after I won the D2 national championship, and then 2020, like 2019, 2020, they brought in a new coach, uh, Pat Tracy, and he was he was down to help me out and do
Mhm.
whatever, and, like, so he was, like, writing my throwing programming, like, just telling me how many throws to take, and then, like, we would bounce ideas off of each other, and I was the GA that year, so, like, I was helping him out with the other kids and stuff like that, but after COVID, like, after the lockdown, I had to start writing, like, my own weight room programming, because the strength and conditioning coach, he stopped doing it for me, um, and then I was still, like, bouncing ideas off of the throws coach, and he was still doing my, throwing programming, but, like, I guess he would be considered, like, my last coach,
Mhm.
but it was, like, more of, like, a peer-to-peer relationship, it wasn't, like, coach to athlete relationship, and then 21, he left in, like, the middle of the season, so, like, April, like, right after Texas relays, he quit, took a new job, so then I was on my own, like, completely, and I didn't have anybody, like, doing any coaching for me.
So, like, were you after the trials, were you with your now wife? Were you guys, like,
Mhm.
together? Were you engaged? Like, what was the lifestyle like at that point, I guess?
I don't even know if we got engaged 2020, so we were engaged at that point, and we were living together. We had been living together for a while already, and she was like she had just started, like, getting big on social media, and we started, like, 2 small businesses for her, and so she had stuff, like, starting to take off, but it still was like, I had a little bit of money left from working at the GA, but not much, and so I was, like, running out of money, and she was, like, starting to make some more money, um, and yeah, so we were engaged, living together, and she was part of that decision, like, she was okay with just paying for everything at that's why I just kept it.
So, like, how did that conversation even go? Were you like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" Or was she like, "Why don't you keep doing it and I'm good doing what I'm doing and I got us?" Or like how did that kinda go?
I don't even remember how it went. I think, like, cause I was for a long time, a few weeks, I was thinking about it, and, like, I was more on the side of just stopping,
Mhm.
because I was like, I didn't really see I didn't really have the fire for it anymore, and I was just like, "Huh." Like, I'm not really seeing, like, fantastic results right now, like, I just had the biggest competition of my life and got last place, um, and she was just like, "If you're gonna do it, you gotta do it, like, don't halfway do it and, like, don't get a job." So, like, if you make this decision, then go all in, and I think we can make it work. And I was like, so I was asking her, like, are you okay with supporting us for the next quad, like up until the next Olympics? And like, are you okay with paying for everything and like just being my sugar mama, basically? And she was like, yeah, I mean, if this is what you really want to do, then I'll do that for you.
So, like, how much do you think that that affects, like, your drive or, like, how serious you take it or, like, your want to be able to do this well?
A lot. So our deal was up until this Paris Olympics. So like now I have to make money somehow. So she kind of put the pressure on me now, but like it was like I have to do it right,
Right.
and I have to make it count and make it worth it. Like I can't just waste both of our time and like waste this opportunity that she's given me. So that in a way it put more pressure on me, but it was more freeing than anything.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That says a lot about both of you guys, actually, but I mean, like, for me, I feel like that was one of the things that when I heard that story, like, I think that you talked about it a little bit in an interview, and I was just kinda, like, impressed, with both of you guys from that because, I mean, I think that it takes a pretty secure dude to allow a woman to be strong, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, and I also think that it takes a pretty strong woman to say, like, "I'm gonna do this for us, but you then have to do this
Mhm.
well." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think it's a way of, like, giving you the opportunity to go after something that you only have, like, a small window of time to do, but also being like, you're not gonna just this isn't like your past to just, like, halfway do it. Like, if you're gonna do
Yeah.
it, you gotta do it,
Yeah.
like, all in. So I think that like, I liked that story. Think that I feel like we have a few stories that are kind of, like, reminiscent of that in a few ways, but,
Yeah.
I thought that that was, like, pretty cool. I'm sure that when you ended up making the team, it was probably, like, pretty emotional for you, like, thinking
Yeah.
of all that.
Yeah. It was just like there's a lot of gratitude just for even the opportunity that she gave me and like everybody that has supported me and helped me along the journey. I wouldn't have gotten here if it wasn't for like the whole community that helped me.
Yeah, because it is actually, like, a pretty unique story, like, I don't know anybody off the top of my head as far as the throwers go that were on that team that weren't from, like, Power 5 Division 1. If I'm thinking about it, like, just running through it in my head, I mean, some Ivy League guys, um, but I mean, everybody was kind of from like a
Yeah.
pretty like, I mean, like Peyton obviously was at North Dakota and then, so I mean him, but that's, like, kind of a that's not the same as Division II in my
Yeah.
mind, like, they were a good throws program, like, he went to a good throws program that had proven success, and then, um, you know what I mean, really, you just don't see that often, and so, for me, I think that your whole thing, like, who's that thrower deal, like, because I mean, I did, like, when I mean, like, at Tucson, I saw your throw, and I was like, "Who's that kid?" Like, not disrespectfully, I just did never like, when you're in the NCAA and, like, I'm a coach, like, I'd seen most of the kids that it were, like, doing
Mhm.
things, and, like, I didn't know, like, you know, what was going on, and I mean, not that I necessarily followed the men's disc, like, super closely, as closely as I follow, obviously, like, the shot, or at the time, I was only coaching women at Vanderbilt, so I was interested just, like, what's going on here, but, like, what was that, like, who's that thrower thing? Like, was that kind of, was that, like, did you feel like you wanted to be, like, kind of like, "Alright, you don't know who I am, but, like, you're about to," type of thing, or, like, what was that like for you?
It was kinda just like never really cared if anybody knew who I was, um, and, I knew that nobody knew who I was, and I knew that I was, like, just a obscure thrower who I didn't really have a name for myself, and I wasn't really, the goal wasn't, trying to make a name for myself, more so it's just, embracing
Yeah.
the unknown.
Because, like, from the things I've seen so far, I don't really feel like you're, like, a big time, like, ego guy with
Yeah,
anything, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever been that kind of guy, like a showboaty kinda guy or something like that, but yeah, I think that's just part of who I am as a person, I'm not a big talker, I'm not a big social guy,
Yeah.
but, if you ask me questions, I'll talk to you, especially if it's something about, what I'm passionate about, what I like talking about.
Yeah, so maybe that brings me to the whole start of it. So when people found out that we were working together, like, everybody was kinda, like, trying to figure out, I think, how, like, that connection happened, which is completely understandable, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we don't really have, obviously, any ties, and so, like, I think that that would probably be, like, a question worth answering. So, for me, like, obviously, I said, when you had the throw in Tucson, I, like, was trying to see, like, where where you came from or whatever, just interested, and then when you made the team in at the trials, I was like, "Okay, like, that's awesome." Obviously, the way that you did it was really cool. Um, didn't think too much about it, went to Paris, obviously, like, in the village, right? And so I think for me, like, when I saw you in the village, I was just like, I think that my initial impression was just, like, I could tell that, like, you were just, like, you were excited, you know what I'm saying? Like, this was your first Olympics. It seemed like you were just trying to, like, absorb it all, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that for me, there were a decent amount of people that was their first time Olympics, like, as far as the throwers went.
Mhm.
So the people that were there for their first Olympics, and even, like, the people were there as it was their second Olympics, and this had only been my second Olympics also, like, and in 21, when we were quarantined, like, none of the stuff that was happening, like
Yeah.
village life or any of that was going on. So, I think everybody was just kind of, like, excited about, like, everything about it, So, for me, like, I could tell that you were just like, "I'm gonna enjoy this experience," And so, I mean, and that kinda brings me to the pins, I think that's how we kinda, like, got on a vibe in the first place,
Yeah.
so, what do you think about that?
I think that's how I tell everybody that we met was, just in the village trading pins, and that was our big connection was we were both, like, obsessing over the pin
Pin
trading
hounds.
and,
Pin hounds.
trying to get the rarest pins in the village, and so that was the fun part about it for me, and then everybody always asks me, the same thing, and so I tell them it was the pins, and then you DM'd me and said that I wasn't annoying, so you
Yeah,
would
that
like
was
to
a
work
big
with
one. That
me.
was a big thing for me. Like, low maintenance, doesn't seem annoying, pretty chill, like, maybe we can make this work out, but so for me with the pins, like, so obviously, like, I'd been to the Olympics before with Joe, and, like, there wasn't a whole lot of pin trading going on because everyone was quarantined, A. B, I was in the coach's hotel, And so we were kind of quarantined in there, like,
Yeah.
legitimately. So 21 Olympics was not a really, like, highlight happy feeling moment for me, and I think a lot of probably the even, like, the athletes there, the coaches, like, it was very isolating,
Mhm.
you know? It was just, like, a weird vibe, no one was in the stands, like, that whole deal. So, like, when we got to the village, and it's just, like, all the people, right? It was, like, a completely different experience than, like, I could have even imagined. Like, I had no sense of, like, village life. Like, I'd never and even Joe, in 2016, he didn't stay in the village. So, like, he'd never really experienced, like, village life. And, like, I think that the people that have experienced that understand, like, what that actually means. It's like college, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's, like, crazy.
Yeah.
So, like, as far as the pins go, I had no real interest in the pins. Like, I brought pins because I was like, I'm just gonna bring them, it seems like the right thing to do, we had some. Like, he had a ton of pins because of all the teams, right? So whenever we had a bunch of kits, and I, like, condensed them, and I take the pins and, like, put them in one bag, and so then when we were leaving for Paris, I was like, "I'm just gonna grab a bunch of pins." So we get there, and we're there for, like, maybe, like, a week or something, and Ryan's trading a bunch of pins, like,
Mhm.
otter dust, like, I see some people trading pins, I see some people's lanyards growing, and I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I see Annette has the boba pin. Okay, Chinese Taipei boba pin, and I'm like, "That's cute. I like boba tea, like, I want that pin." So, then I see Ryan, and I said something to Ryan about the boba tea pin, like, "Oh, do you have the boba tea pin?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have it." And I said, "Okay, if you give me the boba tea pin, I'm gonna give you all my US pins to trade." Okay,
God.
so that's how it started because I wasn't trading.
Mhm.
I was just, like, observing, and I thought that pin was cute, so I wanted, like, a cute pin, like, that's like, "Okay, I'll just take one home, it'll be cute." So I'm excited about this, okay? So I put the USA pins in my bag, I go back the next day to the high performance center, see Ryan sitting at lunch, so I go up to Ryan, I say, "Alright, I got your pins. Do you have my boba tea pin?" And Ryan's like, "Well, the terms have changed." And I was like, "What do you mean, dude? Like, we have a deal about the pins." He's like, "Well, let me show you something." And so he shows me on his phone that the boba tea pin's, like, worth, like, $400. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And so Ryan, like, explained, you know how he is, like, very detailed, explained the entire thing to me about, like, certain pins are rare, and there's certain countries that only have so many, and if you can get these and you can get this, they mean a lot. And, like, he'd been collecting, like,
Yeah.
he'd been collecting. He collected in 16, he collected in 21. So, like, he was not a beginner, okay? And so then, like, my brain had no clue that this was, like, I knew the pin trading was cute, but I didn't know it was, like, lucrative
Yeah.
and cute. So then to me, like, my brain just lit up. I was like, "So let me get this straight, like, some of these pins can be worth, like, 500, 6" he's like, "Literally, like,
Mhm.
people will pay for these pins."
Yeah.
So then from that point forward, it was just like, game on, like, I'm getting all the pins. So I tell Joe, I was like, "I'm getting the boba tea pin, like, I have to." So Ryan doesn't trade me the boba tea pin. That's fine, like, keep it, I want you to have it. I'm like, "I'm gonna get one regardless." So go back that day, go and I'm like, I have my pins in my bag, and I'm just like I go over to where, like, the bread is, and the coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there just, like, waiting, and I see a girl walk by, Chinese Taipei, and I go over to her, I'm like, "Pins for trade," like, "You wanna trade?" Opens up her bag, she has, like, 7 different bags of all the Chinese Taipei pins. So I give her, like, all of our US pins. I had, like, 3 different ones. I get 2 boba teas and, like, 2 other Chinese Taipeis. I say up to Joe, I'm like, "Take a picture." I'm holding both 2 boba teas, one in each hand like this. I was like, "Joe, take a picture, send it to Ryan." Ryan's like, "Yep, expected nothing less." Like, and from then on, it was just, like, nuts. And then when you had the Pokemon one, and I was just like, "Okay, this guy's serious." Like, no one has the media pins, like,
Yeah.
and I know you liked, Pokemon, 'cause didn't you have that on your uniform or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah.
So check this out.
You got it? When did you get it?
I got it on eBay.
Oh my god.
Dude, yes.
I got the Snoop pin.
You got the Snoop
Yeah.
pin? No way.
Yeah, I got
How?
it after my marketing agent got it for me
Oh my
somehow. I don't
gosh.
know. Yeah.
That was the rarest of the rare. Yeah, so the pins definitely united us, and then the story about so this is one that I told Joe too. So Do you remember when we were, like, walking I think we were coming back from our performance center, it was, like,
The
at
guy
night.
was harassing you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I told Joe about this, and he, like, literally could not have cared less. I was like, "Okay," because like, I didn't really understand, like, not to be, like, super naive, but I'm like, I'm out there, like, for real trying to trade these pins, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm like I say to the guy, I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, this one." He's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll trade you, I'll trade you." I'm like, "I want, whatever you had." I was like, "I want this one, I'll give you this one." He's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." He's like, "But you don't have to give me your pin." And I was like he's like, "Just, give me your, like, your WhatsApp." I was like, "What?" Like, I couldn't like, I wasn't there. I wasn't like, "Okay, wait, what's happening?" And you were like, "Dude, if you saw her husband, you would freak out right now." And then I was like, "Oh, I get it." And then Tim Weaver was like, "We're outta here."
Yeah.
Remember, like, pulled me out. I was
Yeah.
like, "Alright, guess the trading's over for tonight."
Yeah, that guy was he
That
was on
was
some weird stuff.
yeah, but that was good times, though. I mean, no regrets. That whole situation was awesome. But yeah, but, like, for me, like, after the Olympics, and I don't know how it was for you, like, but I feel like it's just a very, very difficult transition, and I think that, like, everybody talks about it, like, there's, like, been peer-reviewed articles about, like, Olympic blues, and, like,
Yeah.
every single person that's ever been to the Olympics talks about it, and I think
Mhm.
that even, like, I was reading a few articles after the Olympics, like, even about, like, coaches and stuff. It's like that you spend so much time kind of, like, building up to this thing, and then the thing's over, and then you're, like, looking forward, and you're like, "Am I gonna do another one? What am I doing?" And that was, like, so much a part of, like, your everyday and, like, your purpose of, like, what you were doing, and then, like, kinda the music stops, and it's kinda like this, like, pin drop, like,
Yeah.
what now, like so, like, for me, I think and part of the reason that I, like, thought about you was just because I was like well, at first, I was like, and it was gonna be a business proposition, like, "Hey, man, you want me to write you a workout for your Pikachu pins?" But I was just, like, I was thinking about what do I want to do? You know what I mean? And I think that for me, like, leaving college was it was hard because I kind of gotten to a point where I was where I thought I wanted to be. And then, like, right when I got kind of like where I thought I wanted to be, and like I was in a pretty good position where, like I had an associate head title, I was in the SEC, like the salary was finally nice, like I had the scholarship money, I had the team, I had a good facility, like everything was kind of like in place and in play for the first time. And then it was like, like we have our twins, and it's just, you kinda have to figure out how you're gonna balance your life with your career, and so, like, leaving my profession at kind of, like, the high point was weird,
Yeah.
and it wasn't something that it's never been something that I've regretted at all, but it was never something that was, like, necessarily easy to do, and I think that, like, when I stepped back from coaching college, and then it was like, we have a year until the Olympics, there was sort of, like, this boost, like, pep in my step of, like, well, we have this big important thing that we're trying to do, and then when that big important thing was over, it was kinda like, "Alright, well, I don't have the college thing anymore." I've always had, like, a group that was kinda depending on me. Joe's at a completely different place in his career than, like, these, 18 to 23-year-olds that I'd been working with that were,
Yeah.
like, on the come up, like, it's a real different thing to be, like, at the top, trying to stay at the top than it is climbing to the top, right? And so I think that, like, for me, I kind of had this I don't wanna say I mean, like, not necessarily an epiphany, but, like, in my head, I was just like, "Well, what do I wanna do?" And, like, I want to use my skill set to, like, help people kind of, like, get what they want,
Yeah.
you know? And so I'm, like, looking, like, into it of in terms of just, like, well, what can I do? Like, I can't coach 100 people, like, I don't really have, like we don't have the facility for that yet, we don't have necessarily the time for that yet,
Mhm.
um, and I thought about you because I liked your demeanor, and, like, when I told you that I didn't think you were annoying, like, I don't think you're annoying, and I do think not trying to be mean and saying that other people are like, some people are annoying, but, like, I think a lot of people in the position that you're in have this attitude of, like, "Can you believe I'm not getting this? Can you believe I'm not getting that? Can you believe I don't have a shoe deal? Can you believe I'm not getting into
Yeah.
meets? Can you believe that I don't make any money?" And it's like, I mean, yes, I can believe that because, I mean, I see the very, very top of the sport that's, like, fighting for survival,
Mhm.
one throw away from having nothing, so, like, I do understand when people that are making teams and that are really good aren't getting what you would think that they should be getting, right? What you should think they should be getting. Like,
Yeah.
if you were an outside person and you knew, like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's an Olympian," you would think that you had a bunch of things that you don't have.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even have some basic needs, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that, like, knowing that kind of like I'm like, "Okay, well, it's not that common to find somebody that's not complaining about it," you know? And so for me, the thing that you said when we first had a first conversation was, like, super impactful for me. And I remember, like, I don't know if you remember this, and I was like, "What motivates you?" And I was, like, really, like, not like I'm testing you, but in a way, I'm just very curious. Like, what is your why? What's the driving factor? Like, whatever. And I was like, "What motivates you?" And you were like, "I'm not motivated to do this." And I was like at first, like, you said that and kinda paused, and I was like, "Okay, like, is this the end of the conversation? Like, are you done?" And you're like, "I'm not motivated to do this, like, I get to do this, like, it's a privilege to be able to do this." And for me, that was, like, very like, that, like, stopped me, like, in my tracks a little bit because I think it's been a really long time, if ever, that I felt like somebody felt that way. Like, this is a privilege.
Yeah.
And I think that for me I kind of feel that way. Like, I always felt like as a college coach, like, especially when I was at
What?
Ohio State, I always felt privileged to be there. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like this is something that I always wanted, and, like, I have the privilege of doing it, and I have the opportunity to do it at a super high level, and, like, that has to happen
Yeah.
because I'm afforded this opportunity. So then it's like, because I have this opportunity that I thought maybe I would never have, like, I was so driven to make it everything that I hoped and thought and wished and forecasted that it could be. You know what I mean? And so that really made me feel like, okay, like, as far as, like, a foundational alignment, I felt like we could work well together because it's not this, like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it because, everybody thinks I can't, and I was this D2 guy and whatever," and I like that too. I like the chip on the shoulder thing,
Mhm.
but it wasn't like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it because like, nobody wants to give me any money, I'm gonna make money, or I'm gonna do it for all these reasons that are kind of, like, hollow,"
Yeah.
And so, like, for me, that was really cool, and then, the not annoying part is kinda just like, you have taken a ton of accountability for this all by yourself. You did it all by yourself, just like you and your wife, and you didn't have training partners and you didn't have a coach, you didn't have this, you didn't have that, didn't have somebody paying for you to go here and there and paying for your shoes and whatever, or your gas to get where you were going, and so for me, that was kind of like, okay, like you're taking accountability. You feel like this is a privilege, right? Like maybe there's a place where, like, I can help you in some way, and I think that for me too, like, I didn't wanna come into it and be like, "Alright, dude, like, I'm gonna tell you what to do," and I think
Mhm.
I really wanted to be, like, respectful in the terms of, like, I don't know if you even want help. I don't know if you even want somebody to look at anything that you're doing or you're perfectly, like, happy with what you're doing, but, like, if you want somebody to, like, look at your videos or look
Mm.
at your program, and I think that from there it kinda 'cause, like, at first I would ask, like, "Do you want to show me what you're doing, or do you want me to write you something?" And then, like, for me, when you'd say, like, "If you would write me something, like, I would like that." And then I was like, "Okay," like, I feel like that was cool for me, like, I felt like it was like you were, like, saying, like, "I trust that you're gonna be able to come up with something that would make some
Mhm.
sense?" And so I think from there, like, it made me feel like, want to invest a little bit more into it because I felt like you were, like, receptive to it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think I wasn't looking for a coach or anything, but if I would've wanted to pick a coach, like, it would've been someone who's coaching someone at the top, like, it wasn't I wouldn't have just wanted to get a random coach, like,
Right.
that would've just made no sense to me, but, like, I think your track record, like, speaks for itself, and, like, it would kinda be dumb not to come into this, like, wanting to learn and listen to you, um, but yeah, I I agree with a lot of stuff you said.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, I didn't really know what to expect, and I think that was maybe one of the things that's been, like, the most cool for me to this point is, like, I feel like I didn't really have expectations necessarily, like, I didn't really know, like, where it would go, and so I was kinda just like, "Let's see where it goes," like,
Yeah.
and I think that for me, that's made it kind of fun, and I think that the thing that was like, I liked is, like, I would be like, "Alright, I'm gonna write you something, let me know, whatever," and then I would say, like, "If you write it down," like, I like to keep stuff in a journal, whatever, whatever, and then you'd, like, send me a picture of the journal, so it was, like, the fact that you were kind of, like, doing what I had said I thought you should do, the way
Mhm.
I told you to do it made me feel like, okay, like, there's an accountability factor going on, and, like, the way I always felt about it when I had athletes was, like, if they were gonna do what I was telling them to do, the way that I told them to do that, then it was like, "Alright, now I'm accountable for what you're doing," in
Mhm.
my opinion, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had some kids that, like, weren't as invested in it, they kinda, like, halfway did what I asked,
Yeah.
and then I didn't feel like, "Okay, dude, if you're not gonna get what you want, it's not necessarily gonna be all on me because you're not really listening,
Yeah.
right?" But then the kid that was, like, going full force with everything I asked exactly how I wanted to, perfect detail, like, I'm going to bat for you, like, I'm in this with you. If you're doing bad, like, I'm taking that home with me, and I'm gonna try to figure out, like, what's wrong because,
Mhm.
like, you're doing what I asked you to do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that part of it for me is, like, I've been doing it, like, on my own for so long and, like, having to create my programming and create, like, my process, and so, like, I talked about this on a TikTok one time, like, it's a lot harder for me to, like, trust in the process and, like, just let go of all the doubts when I'm the one coming up with it and, like, I'm just kinda winging it, but, like, that having someone else who knows what they're doing, like, give me instructions, and it's like it's freeing and, like,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of pressure off of me, and then so, like, for me, like, just doing everything you say is, like, that makes me feel a whole lot less weight on my shoulders, like, makes it a lot easier for me.
That's, like, what I say to, like, Joe all the time, and like I said to the I used to tell this to the college kids, I'd be like, one of the hardest things about being done as an athlete is, like, you're never getting coached again. Like, there's
Yeah.
never someone again that is gonna be like, "Go work out. That wasn't good enough. Do it harder. Not enough. Do better. I know you can do better." Like, that stops in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. Like, you might have, like, a mentor for your job or, like, a supervisor, whatever, but it's not the same. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I think that, like, it's like for me, like looking at what you're doing and then trying to like look at it and observe what you're doing and then like kind of form decisions and like look at what you're doing and where could this be better and like okay, you're weak here, so where can we add something in the weight room? What drills can we do? It's like it's just like having more hands on deck to try to like find out the formula of like what you need.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes like when you're doing it by yourself, you get so introspective on every single thing that like you don't have that like aerial view
Mhm.
of what's going on, and I think especially, like, when you get a new coach that kind of is coming into it from a very, like, "Okay, what about this? What about that?" And kind of like an observing, presence on it, you really start seeing some things, and, like, I think that the thing that's been cool for us is, like, a lot of the things that I've been like, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" You had already kind of, like, addressed and, like, we talked about, and you were like, "I feel like I do this," or "I feel like I do that," but you had been in it, like, so deeply that, like, I think it was hard for you to kinda, like, trace back how and why because it just, like, becomes such an evolution
Yeah.
where you can't really find the end of the string in it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think definitely, like, my especially, like, with my stuff, like, particular, like, there's so many little things that just kept on, like, escalating into different things and then just transforming, which, like, it changed my technique, it changed what I did in the weight room. Everything was but, like, I couldn't tell you what was the initial trigger
Right,
for
exactly.
everything.
Right, and I think that that's how it goes. It's like, I did this because I was doing that, and then I did that because I was doing this,
Yeah.
and it gets to be, like, such this web, like,
Yeah.
where when you have a coach that kinda comes in, it can kinda be like, "Well, maybe I can help you untangle that a little bit, but like I think that for me, I had a lot of respect for the fact that, I think, in being with just Joe and I, like it's really hard to motivate yourself to do
Yeah.
it all by yourself all the time. Even just having somebody that's like sending you a workout and then it's like, well, they sent it, so I should,
I
you know
gotta
what I
do
mean? Like, did you
it.
do the workout today
Yeah.
or did you like make other plans? You know what I mean? I think that
Mhm.
that can be very helpful for people that have been by themselves because I just think that it gets monotonous. It gets to be kind of like it, and like you said, it gets to be a thing where it's just like it's all on you, and, like, you get so in the weeds with every single thing you're doing because you're writing the plan. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you're in the driver's seat, it's like you're driving and navigating all at the same time where, like, you just really need to be focusing on the road, you know?
exactly.
So let's answer a couple of these questions. So what do you think for you as an athlete, like, has been your most defining moment? Like, would you say that it was recently, like the trials, or do you think that, like, as an athlete, like, there was something earlier in your career that kind of like was that kind of like made you want to be what you are now or what you want to become?
I mean, I think it probably all started with, like, just making it to the D2 national championship when I was a junior and, getting 8th place, like, that was a big deal to me, and, like, I never went to state or anything in high school, I never made it to state, I never made it past regionals, and I didn't have a huge PR in high school, so, like, I never even really saw like, at regionals, I saw some guys throw pretty far, like 180, 190, but and then, like, 60 in shot put, but, like, there was only a couple of those guys, um, but, like, I had never really seen people throw, like, super far. I never like, talked to those people, and so just going to nationals was like, these are, like, gods to
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and so I talked to people, and I just watched them and observed them, and they were just, like, normal guys. I mean, especially, like, D2 guys, like, they're just normal people, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was like, "Oh," it kinda, like, lifted the veil, like, revealed the Wizard of Oz or whatever,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I was like, "Oh, there's not really anything, like, super special about them." And so I was like, "Well, I guess, like, why can't I be up there too?" Like, they're the same as me pretty
Right.
much, like,
Yeah.
I'm decently strong,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm explosive, like, I don't there's no reasons why I shouldn't be up there with them,
Right.
and then I think that was, like, my defining
I
moment.
feel like everybody kinda has, like, a story like that, and it's
Yeah.
like you ask somebody that question and I'm thinking you're gonna be like, "When I made it to the Olympic Games," you know? And it's something that's so far
Yeah.
back from that, like, I think that, like, when people ask me, like, something that, like, really stuck, it's like I have 2 stories that I feel like were like, the first one, like, when I first started throwing, I didn't know anything about it, like, they were like, "Okay, look at me," like, "Okay, you go over there, you try this," whatever, that
Mhm.
whole thing they do with, like, high school track, middle school track. So I'm, like, in 7th grade, and I'm throwing the shot, like, pretty well. Like, I threw the shot, I think, like, 31 feet starting out, and that was, like, with an 8-pound shot, and people were I was winning meets, and I was like, "This is cool, I like to win meets." And then I was, like, doing the relays, which I really liked because that was fun, and then I hated the discus because I was throwing the disc, like, 57 feet. And this guy came over to me after the meet, and he's like, "Did you win the shot?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You threw 31 in the shot?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "And then you threw 50 feet in the discus?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't like the discus, I don't wanna throw the discus." He's like, "We're not throwing it right." He's like, "If you can throw 31 in the shot, you can throw 100 in the disc." I was like, "Bro, I ain't throwing 100 feet. Like, there's no way I'm throwing 100 feet." So, like, I was throwing the disc and, like, pulling it back, and it was, like, coming out of the back of my hand, like,
Yeah.
no clue.
Yeah.
So he shows me, like, the drill where you, like, flick it up to yourself, and he shows me the bowling drill. He goes, "Before your next meet, you throw this thing up to yourself, you go bowl it." So I'm like, "I ain't throwing 100, like, I'll try it." Go out there, like, a few days later, do what he says, try to feel it, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what he's telling me to do. And I go in there, boom, 106 feet. I was just I was just like, "This is insane." Like, this is just
Yeah.
absolutely mind-blowing, right? So, like, that kinda, like, really started me off in this thing, like, how did it get that much better, right? Like, I
Yeah.
thought that was, like, the coolest thing ever. And then, like, I kind of, like, was getting like, I cared about it a little bit more then, and, like, I don't know if did you know Judd Logan? You're a Division II guy. You knew who he was? So, Judd was, like he went to my high school, like, so his son and I graduated together, like, I knew his family, like, his dad played for the Packers, like, they have a sporting goods store in my hometown, like, everybody knew the Logans, and, like, I knew who Judd was, but, like, I did not know anything about throwing, like, I
Yeah.
remember we made a banner for him in art class when he went to the Olympics in think that was to been 2000, and we made a banner for him that was like, "Good luck at the Olympics, Judd," and it was like they drew a hammer on it, like, the art teacher drew a hammer on it, and I went home and I was, like, asking my mom, like, "I don't understand, like, what is he doing? What is a hammer? Like, please, someone tell me,"
Yeah.
like, I couldn't understand, and, like, there was, like, no YouTube, right? Like,
Mhm.
there's no internet really
Yeah.
to, like, look it up. I just did not get it, what it was. So it's, like, fast forward and then kind of, like, understanding, like, how he fits in with shot put, discus, whatever. They would have camp, so I'd go to camp, but, like, I didn't really know necessarily, like, anything about it, but then like, I'd go to his camp, and then I started understanding it. He had a club called Ashland Elite, and they would come to my high school some days and, like, throw when the high schoolers were done. So I would just sit there and, like, watch them, and they were, like he had a woman that her name's Adrienne Blewett. She threw 60 feet in the shot back in the early 2000s, which was, like, amazing, right? And then he had a couple guys that were throwing, like, 20 meters in the shot, and I was just, like I just, like, watched it. So from the very beginning of it, I saw, like, a higher level of it, and, like, Judd had made 4 Olympic teams. So I never had that, like, very bottom level like, from the time I was in high school, I was like, "I'm throwing 50 feet in the shot, and I'm throwing 150 in the disc." Like, in my head, that was,
Yeah.
like, gold standard of, like, what I needed to do, And so, like, my junior year, I'd thrown 44 feet in the shot, I think, my sophomore year. In my junior year, I was like, "Okay, we gotta get something going here." Like, I'd been training, like, I was focused. I was good as like 44 as a sophomore. I was 2nd in the state as a freshman, 2nd in the state as a sophomore. So my junior year, I was like, "Okay, we gotta get something going." So, like, we were going to our conference meet, and, like, I was feeling pretty good, and I'd thrown 44, and it was, like, basically, like, 2/3 way through the season, and my high school coach was like, "What do you think you're gonna throw tomorrow?" And I was like, "I wanna throw, like, 48." And he, like, started laughing. He's like, "Well, why don't we just, like, start at 46? Like, you've only thrown 44 this year so far." And I was like, "No, I'm gonna throw 48," And so, like, we went to the meet, and I was just like I was warming up good, and, like, first throw, I threw 48 feet. And I just remember being just like, "This is just, like, insane." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it was just, like because I knew then that with that mark as a junior, like, I kinda knew what my opportunities would be. You know what I'm saying? So I just, like, always felt like track was so cool where it was, like, fix something, you could, like, work on something, like, "Oh, I'm gonna get my bench up, and I'm gonna get my stand throw up, and I'm gonna get this drill better, and this drill better," and it's like, you do all these little things, and then it makes the big thing better, right? And then I feel like I love the part where it's never perfect, like,
Yeah.
even still, even for somebody at Joe's level, it's like there's still, "Well, if we did this or if we did that, if we tried this, if we tried that," that's the thing that I love about it, and I think that, like, all throwers across all events, like, have this mindset that's just like, what can I do to make this thing better than it is,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Think that resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the people that are, like, at the top of the sport especially, like, it's just this, like, ever evolving thing, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that's something that I've always really enjoyed about it. So, people have asked, "What do you do to stay motivated when you're throwing bad?"
When I'm throwing bad, I don't ever really think about it as throwing bad. I think about it like it's a rough day and I'm struggling to like nail a concept, but like I'm always like moving towards that concept. Like if I'm just like completely messing everything up and I'm not moving towards that concept, then I'm like, all right, we need to like address something. Like, am I sleeping? Is my sleep off? Is like something in my daily life is that off? Like, I think that's kind of how I approach it. Is like, what's going on? Like, am I moving towards my goal, or am I moving away from my goal? And if I'm moving away, what's doing that to me? What's making me move away? Like, what do I need to address that's not throwing? Because it's probably not the throwing.
Yeah. I mean, I actually kind of, like, fully agree with that, like, even, like, when I'd have times with, like, collegiate athletes where it was just, like, in a rut or whatever it was, it would be like for me, it would always be like, if I can pinpoint, like, this is not happening,
Yeah.
this thing right here is not happening, and this thing was happening when you were doing X, Y, and Z, to me, it was never like this, like it wasn't emotional,
Mhm.
right? Like, it didn't ever need to be, like,
Yeah.
emotional. It was like to me, it was very just like X plus Y equals Z, like,
Yeah.
this isn't happening. It was happening over here. That's why we're not getting the end result that we're looking for,
Mhm.
right? Like if you can see it and like it's very easy to see sometimes like technically you're doing this wrong or like hey dude, we just like your body's down. We're doing like there are certain times of the year where like you just can't expect the same things. Like and so the goal needs to be different. Like if you just got like destroyed because you trap bar deadlifted 800 pounds for 4 for the first time in your life, like, you can't expect the firing patterns to be there to be able to do the things that maybe you were doing when you're fresh and throwing
Mhm.
65 meters, like, it doesn't make sense, so I think that a lot of the time people get, like, in their feelings about stuff because the expectation isn't realistic
Yeah.
for what's going on in the training, right? And
Yeah.
then it's just like and then I also think too, one of the things that really messes people up is, like, it becomes this emotional thing, and then you have this huge barrier because you're, like, starting to make it something, like, personal.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, I can't do anything right," or "I always
Yeah.
mess this up," or "Here I go again, la da da," and then it's just like, "Okay, now you're making it now it's going too deep." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And, like, I can understand, like, listen, I feel sometimes kind of, like, bad when I kinda do this because when I was in college, I acted terrible. A lot, like, most of the time, and that was learned, like, I didn't do that in high school, I think my attitude was a whole lot better. I think in college, I just, like, I got so, like, single focused on just, like, end result that, like, whenever things didn't go how I thought they should have been going, it was like that was what I was thinking about. I was thinking about, like, I wanna win this, or I wanna do that, or I wanna throw this far or that far, and I wasn't as absorbed in the process as I should have been, and I think that, like, when you're really good at any point, like, when I was young and I was really good and I knew no matter what I did, I was winning this meet by 10 feet, you don't really have to think about a lot of stuff because there's no pressure. Like, I'm gonna win the meet, so I can stay kind of like siloed in my process because there's no external factors that are coming at me, right? And I think that's why, like, sometimes you see these people that they go to these meets that are kinda like relaxed meets, or they take their first throw and they know that, like, "Oh, I'm making the final for sure, and I'm probably gonna win the meet." And then they can kinda settle in and keep building it, building it, building it. Or you go to a meet where it's like, there's 7 people here that could, like, run me over if I have a bad day.
Yeah.
If I don't get going right now, I'm not making the final, right? And it completely changes, like, how you are thinking about what you're doing, right? You become so much more focused on external and, like, you lose yourself as far as, like, your sensory of, like, "What am I doing technically? What am I thinking about?" Whatever, and, like, you lose sense of feeling, you know? So I think that, like, people, when they talk about, like, getting in, like, these ruts, I mean, I can relate to it, but I think that a lot of the time it was like I wasn't doing a proper job of like keeping myself in check and seeing the big picture and like asking myself like, well, what, like you said, like, why is this actually happening? You know, and I think there's like a maturity that comes with that. And also like, you know, like we said, like you're not necessarily like an ego guy, but I think that it's really easy to let the ego run the show,
Yeah,
you
like,
know?
I'm
Yeah,
better than this, it shouldn't
exactly,
be
and I think that
happening.
that's why people lose their minds, like, one of the things that, like, that I'm really big on and, like, I was really strict about with the college athletes is, like, you know, and like, we've all seen it, like, you go to a meet or you're warming up outside the track or you're warming up, like, at the field, like, 2 days before the meet, and somebody's, like, throwing a fit, you know, on
Yeah.
the field when they're throwing or they take a throw and there's
Mhm.
like, I was so bad at a point in my career with that because I was, like, frustrated, but it's also, like, this thing you're doing that's like, "I'm better than this.
Yeah.
No, trust me, I'm better than this." You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a protection it's like a protective, like,
Yeah.
mechanism, like a defense mechanism of just like, "No, trust me, guys, I'm better than this."
Yeah, like, putting
Like
on a show for
yeah,
everybody.
exactly, and, like, so, like, my thing with the college kids was, like, I would get people in, like, transfers and stuff or, like, kids that were young that would do that, and it would just be, like the kids that had been around would just be, like, waiting for me to just be, like because, like, for me and, like, this is something I kinda, like I'd say, like, Joe I learned from Joe, it's just, like, you don't put blood in the water.
Yeah.
Like, you don't like, all that's doing is, like, you're giving people so much ammo.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's like and it also shows lack of control, and then it also kinda shows, like, it obviously vulnerability, but it just shows that, like, you don't have yourself together.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I hate that because it's like, when I see someone doing that, I'm like you're very vulnerable, like, you are prey now,
Yeah.
and I know that sounds bad, but, like, there've been a couple times in my career where, like, you're at the conference championship or you're at NCAA championship, and I just watch a warm up, and I know what is probably gonna happen, and I'm usually pretty close to being right about it because you see people's holes, and you see their face, and you see their reaction, you see their coach's reaction, right? And like, and I mean, like, I've been guilty of that myself of, like, if a kid's like, if a kid, like, warms up and it's, like, looking like they're doing that thing that you is a very slippery slope when they do, and you're about to, "Oh gosh, like, I hope this doesn't go," but it's like, or when you have a kid that's warming up and you're just like, everything is just exactly how we scripted it to be.
Mhm.
It's a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
It's a completely different energy. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, like, that whole, like, facade of, like, trying to pretend like you're better than that or whatever, like, that's also like it's a blood in the water thing, but it's also like you get into a downward spiral with that, like,
Totally.
because then you're like, "Oh, no, no, I'm better than that," and then you mess up again, and
And
you're
you're like,
like,
"Well, am I better than
"Well"
that?" Like, yeah, maybe I'm not,
and you get
like,
more frustrated,
exactly.
you put on a bigger
Totally,
show,
totally.
you just, like, keep going
Yeah,
downhill, like,
totally.
chasing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like at the top end, like, the medals, people are in the medals and stuff, you kinda see that stuff kinda, like, fall away a little bit, like,
Mhm,
you don't see it as much with the people that are, like, really elite because they know better,
mhm.
and they've probably done it in their careers, like, to a fault,
Yeah.
and they've learned, and I think that that's one of the things too that for me has just been so, like, eye-opening with being around, like, super elites, like, the people that are in the medals, top 10 in the world, the Olympians, whatever, it's just like, these like, the young athletes, the young throwers, young high school throwers, and even the college throwers would be so shocked to see how regimented and disciplined they are without somebody telling them,
Hmm.
"Did you bring your throwing shoes? Do you have a towel with you? Did you bring your chalk? Did you warm up? Did you eat?" You know what I'm saying? There's none of that, like, none of
Mhm.
that. Like, it's super, super, super regimented and disciplined all the time, and they're all highly accountable for every single thing they're doing. Like, you're gonna go to Europe, okay, by yourself, and you're not gonna remember to, like, bring your wrist strap. Like, it just doesn't happen. Like,
Yeah,
there's no safety net, you know?
yeah. You can't. I feel like you can't do that.
No, you just can't do that.
It's
It's
not a
simple.
possibility,
Yeah, you
like
just can't do that. Like, you're not serious.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like my one of my favorite quotes is like, "Do your actions reflect your goals?" Right? So it's like, if you wanna be Joe, then don't, like, come to practice with no throwing shoes, no chalk, no like, you're not. Like, you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? Like, that's not reflective of a person that's trying to be the best that ever was,
yeah.
Like, Joe tells this story that I, like, love, and, like, I think that this speaks to, like, how I think it should be as far as, like, being reverent for the space. Like, you go to basketball, you go to a football practice, everything's lined up. Everything's how it's supposed to be. Somebody set that thing up 3 hours in advance. Like, it's boom, boom, boom when you get there,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, one of the things that Joe talks about being at the center was, like, when Art was there, if you didn't show up, he didn't show up and the lines were painted perfectly, like,
Yeah.
he would just turn around and leave.
Yeah.
And, like, people think that that's so insane, but I think that that's awesome because it's like, you have no respect for what we're about to do. And, like, when I heard that and, like, just having had the opportunity to been around Art and, like, have conversations with him, the way that it was like, "If you're not gonna take this seriously, like, I'm not even
Yeah.
I'm
Not
not
gonna
like"
waste my
yeah,
time.
don't waste my time at all, exactly, and I think that, like, for me, with the college athletes, I tried to instill a certain level of that, like, this isn't a game, okay? Like, this isn't, like, playtime,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, we're here to do something serious, and, like, I want this to be treated with the same amount of respect that you have going to high school football practice, high school volleyball practice. Like, don't come in here slapping around,
Yeah.
couple arm stretches, "What am I gonna throw today?" It's like, no. That's not how you get ready to do something
Yeah.
serious, And so, I just think that, like, the reverence for it is something that separates people, you know what I mean? All right. I think that the last question should be, well, here, I'll answer one more question. Somebody asked on Instagram, they said something like to the effect of like, "Oh, you decided to take on Joe. Like, what do you think that he like why do you think he has what it takes?" And I was like, "Okay." Well, I mean, obviously, like, it's not like we're, like, dealing with somebody that hasn't proven
Yeah,
themselves. Like, obviously, like, last year, top 25 in the world, make the Olympic team for the US, which is obviously, like, the hardest team to make in terms of, like, making a discus team at the Olympics for any country, right? So, I mean, obviously, like, there's potential there, but, like, like I kind of said earlier, I think that, like, where you could use help is where I have some expertise, you know what
yeah,
I'm saying? Like, I think that it's kind of a good fit because, like, you know, for me too, it's like I last year at the Olympics was the first time I've ever been to a major championship since 2019, and I didn't have someone else besides Joe.
yeah.
And so, like, for me, like, having someone else kind of helps me stay balanced a little bit, and I like having to, like, I think we've always liked having someone that we were helping kinda, like, move towards the type of stuff that he was doing. You know what I mean? And, like, I think that the men's discus in this country is, like, starting to really kind of, like, come up in the last few years. Like, obviously, Mason Finley had gotten a medal for us at a world championship, and he, is awesome was awesome when he was an athlete. And I think that, like, it's it's something I would really like to see as a coach to see, like, our guys get in the medals, in the discus. And I think that we have the potential and the capability to be able to do that, And so somebody like you that has a lot of talent, you've gotten to a really high level without a lot of resources. I think that, like, knowing that I can help you kinda connect the dots with some things, like, even, like, the professional stuff and,
Mhm.
like, in Joe as well, just kind of like he's been around the block, obviously, for a really long time. So kinda like helping somebody kinda, like, navigate that seemed like it could be a really good fit. So it's like, as far as, like, you having what it takes, like, there's no doubt in my mind that you can't throw, like, 70 meters, you know what I'm saying? So, like, I don't think that anybody would be like, "I can't believe," if you did something like that at this stage, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're not that far off of it as it is, but I think that, helping you kind of, like, build consistency in what you're doing and, like, establish more of, like, a pattern and a system in, like, your process, I think is something that, like, we can really help out with. But, like, as far as, like, having, what it takes, I think that that is something that you had proved, before I ever entered the picture in any way, in my opinion, you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah,
you know, I think that just the fact that you've done what you did by yourself is something that, like, deserves high praise, you know what I mean? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
yeah. I appreciate that.
So the last question will be, what are your goals for 2025? And then maybe I'll share what I think my goals for you would be in 2025.
My main goals are like get consistent, like establish a system that's repeatable, and then get consistent throwing over like set a higher minimum where my minimum will still get me in the top ranks of whatever meet I'm competing in, and then establish a consistency above 65, so that like I don't have those meets where I'm just like even in my bad meets, I'm still able to perform well. And then like obviously like make the team and compete well at the World Championships in Tokyo.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe is big on, like, he calls it raising your minimums, and I think that that's something that, like, I've always kind of understood. I think that even, like, from some of the influence from Judd Logan, just, like, one of his quotes is, "Don't rest till your good is better and your better is best."
Yeah.
And I think that that made me always makes me think about, like, my PR used to be 60, and now 60 is like a day that I could erase.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then it's like, once, like, you're 63 is a day that's kinda like, "Meh," and you're throwing, like, 64 all the time, and then it's like, then you get to the next milestone, and I think that, like, that being a goal is, like, a really mature goal instead of, like, saying, like, "I'm throwing 70 meters next year." Like, like, in all reality, like, you could have a better year this year and not throw a PR. Like,
Mhm.
in reality, in terms of, like, what could it get you?
Yeah.
Like, you could not throw 67 meters and potentially make the team and potentially make the final at a major, but not PR, and I think that that's where people kinda, like, miss it. It's like, it's not always about, like, the PR. Like, one of the things that John Smith always says, it's teams and titles, right? And so it's like, what teams did you make? What titles do you have? It's like, would you rather throw your PR or would you rather win USAs, right? Would you
Yeah.
rather throw a PR or make the final at World Championships? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Being top 10 at World Championships, top 10 in the world. So I think that, like, the goal being raise my minimums, right? My average throw, having 3 throws in every meet, 3 throws in every series that's over 6,350,
Mhm.
like, those are goals that I like to see, you know what I mean? Because or like to hear that that's where your head's at because it just tells me that it's like it's a mature goal, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And, like, it's a process goal, it's not like an outcome goal.
Yeah.
Um, I think that obviously, like, there's some technical things that I have, like, in my head that I would like to see,
Mhm.
like, things that are, like, people will be like, "Oh, that's your goal," like, to see if we could get your stand throw to, like, this level or what
Mhm.
like, those are things to me that, like, fit into the big picture
Yeah.
and, like, making these, like, you know, micro goals
Yeah.
really kind of, like, elevate the macro, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that, like, I like I like where, like, your head's at as far as, like, the end goal of, like, I just wanna be better than I was, consistently better than I was, I think that
Mhm.
that's, like, a really healthy goal, but, um, I guess one more I'll ask you before we close is just, like, what do you think is so, like, since we've been working together and, like, the week you spent here with Joe and I, like, what would you say has been the most surprising thing about this process so far? Or, like, what's the one thing that maybe, like, you thought things would be this way or you had this impression of him or and it's not necessarily how you thought it was?
Uh, I'd say, like, how much of a mom you are. Like
Can't
you
really halfway do it, especially when you got to
Yeah, it's just, like, everything, like, about you is just, like, motherly, like,
Wow.
in every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
It's just, like yeah,
What do you
it's
mean? Like
like, everything you do is just, like, you're, like, nurturing, like like, you seem like you have a rugged exterior and, like, you seem like that, but you're not that
yeah,
you're not that aggressive person, you're a nurturing person.
that's funny. I'm actually, like, I feel like I just talked about this with somebody, and they were just like, "Oh, yeah, like, it's, like, intense." And it's like, I feel like when you're, like, on the battlefield, like, you're not gonna be out there, like, passing out cookies and milk, you know what I'm saying? Like, getting ready for the Olympics, you know what I mean? Like, especially when you're, like, kinda like, like, the only frontline defense for, like,
Mhm.
your husband that's, like, the
Yeah.
athlete out there, And so, I think that, like, it's just one of those things, like, somebody once said to me, and I thought that this was, like, it's, like, basically exactly what you're saying, and this guy was like, "You it's just you're a paradox," and I was like he's like, you're just like you're a kick in the ass, but you're also sweet as can be." And I was just like, I mean, like, I feel like I get it, but I feel like what you're saying, it's like people that actually know me,
Mhm.
like, I don't think that, like, me being, like, nurturing or, like, mom mode, like, that I don't think that that at all takes away from,
Yeah.
like, like, I am still, like, what you probably think that I am, and,
Yeah.
in terms of, like, I can still be, like, strong and
Punch you in the
soft.
face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, you can still I mean, I think I hit you with a stick today at practice, so it's like, let's not forget that. Sure your mom's never done that to you, So, like,
Uh,
and, like, I don't apologize for it. I think that that's one of the things that, like, I I can be both, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
am both, you know what I mean? And, like, the people that don't know me, they just don't see that side of me because, like, I'm not like, if I don't know you,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do, like, probably, like, nice things for you necessarily, but, like, I think that is, like, probably one of the most common misconceptions, I'd say. What about What about, like, from a training perspective? Is there anything that you feel like you were surprised about, like, how we do things, how we think, or is it kind of that's how you expected it to be?
Uh, it's yeah, that's pretty much how I expected it. Like, I knew it was gonna be way different, like, thought processes on the actual throw itself, and it was a lot of different concepts than what my concepts had evolved into over the years. But yeah, after the however many weeks we've been working together, like there wasn't very much surprises left
Were there any surprises
at the
in the
beginning.
beginning? Yeah, like, what do you think in the beginning, like, when just, like, the first, like, few programs, like, the first few weeks of programming?
The first few weeks, I was like, I wasn't used to like not having a set weight
Yeah.
for my workout,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I was just like, oh, I don't know,
But
like
isn't it crazy how, like, how much farther you can take that?
yeah,
You know? And it beats you up, but like you said, like, you come over here and you pick up 200 pounds more than you've ever picked up off the ground in your
mm,
life, like, I think that, like and I'll attribute a lot of this like, I'll say this, like, very directly. After college, I was a graduate assistant at Murray State, and I would drive over to Southern Illinois, and I work with John Smith, okay?
mm,
And I knew John Smith since, like, 2004. Um, he was at Ohio State, I was an Ohio kid. I knew who he was, but I didn't really know him. And then I just, like, obviously had so much respect for, like, just continually producing, and I'm like, what is going on?" Like, I wanna know. And I asked him, and the fact that he, like, told me everything, and then I was like he let me come over there, and, like, I learned how he did stuff,
mm,
and he really taught me how to, like, build a system,
yeah,
right? And I think the most powerful thing I learned from him is, like, you will adapt, like, you will adapt, like and when I started doing his weight room, I was like, "I don't see how anybody can do this
yeah,
and throw." Like, I literally was like, "I don't see how anybody could do this." And it's just like, what your body can adapt to just shows you, like, how powerful, you
mhm,
know what I that is, like,
yeah,
adapting to stress, adapting to this load, this demand, and so I think that, like, when I start working with people and they're just, like, overloaded by it all, and then they realize, like, "Whoa," like and it keeps just getting better and better. I think that that's, like, one of my, like I really enjoy that because it's like I mean, like, again, like, you came over here and you pulled 800 pounds off the ground 4 times, like, I'm sure if somebody would've told you, like, even 6 months ago that you could do that, you would've been like, "Why would you how could I do that?" Like, I don't see how I could ever you
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
What else? Do you have any other questions or we good to wrap up? Yeah.
I had one guy ask me a question on Instagram.
What?
He said, "Can you explain the linear drive and lift as a discus thrower? As a discus thrower uncoils and releases from the middle, the transfer of weight from right foot to left foot and release basically."
So, that question, I feel like he's asking, like, how does a discus thrower lift the discus, like, through the d point of delivery, is that how you're understanding it?
I think, yeah, basically like what we're working on, like the thing that I don't do, like the letting the disc stay back while I'm lifting. And
Well, let me ask you, like, how did you think about lifting the finish? Or, like, how did you not think about, like, lifting it? So
I
how did
didn't.
you think about
Um, I mean, I basically thought about what I wanted to do was just swing the right side around, like around
Yeah,
the left side and
okay.
out to the sector, and then just finish and extend both my legs, and then replace my left leg with the right leg. Um,
Well, like, extending both the legs, I guess, is, like I mean, that's lift, but, like, for me so, like, a lot of the stuff that, like, we've talked about is, like, the things that you were doing, I don't think were wrong, I just think that, like, the way you were thinking about getting separation was maybe, like, you were thinking about getting it from the right side, and maybe we
mm,
think about getting it here, and you were thinking about getting it there, you were thinking about getting it, but the way that we were getting there were different. So it's
yeah,
like, for me, like, very simply, like, obviously not explaining the entire thing, but it's like, every rotational event to me is rotational to 180 and then linear right side, left side, and then rotational from left foot contact around and out, you know? So it's like around and in. So like our thing, we say around and in, around and out, right? And so like after, so the linear drive piece of that is like once you get to 180, if you're doing things the right way, organically, there should be a turnover. Right side is coming in rotationally and left side is going linear. Okay. And then when those two meet in the middle, they ride around the axis on the right side, and that keeps your hips going continuously, like rotationally through the point of delivery. Right. And so like there is rotation happening, but, like, we're not thinking about being rotational, we're thinking about being linear because we've
Yeah.
already created rotation. Does that make sense? So, like, I think that, like, people are really tripping out about, like, like, we posted the thing about the step in, and everybody can kinda relate to this, like, "Yeah, my middle feels so, like, slow or choppy or whatever, whatever," and, like, high-end people, they're the middle of the ring, like, single support to left foot contact, and then double support through extension through the finish looks like it's accelerating, but, like, if you're hitchy in the middle, there are, like, glitches, and you just feel like you can't accelerate through the delivery, and I think that's kinda like the point that you're at, like, now, since we've been working on this week, you're landing really well,
Mhm.
and then you're so used to landing and popping out of it, like, that you don't stay on the ground and let the rotation continue so the right side gets into the block side, right? And that's the part that there's no rhythm for yet. So it's
Mhm.
just very like left foot and up because you were like landing open and heavy on your left side and you had to go right to it. So you haven't had a whole lot of practice of like keeping it behind you. So like we've talked about. So the discus is different than the shot for a lot of reasons. Obviously discus is a bigger ring. Obviously it's a little bit different because of the fact that it's out on a lever, right? So the big thing with it being out on a lever and what another thing that changes the rhythm is the difference between the shot put not having arm chest separation the same way that the discus does.
Mhm.
So like there's still obviously hip shoulder in both the discus and the shot, but like a discus thrower can completely blow the hip shoulder separation and just tag arm chest separation at the front.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas if a shot putter lands like that, and like you made the point earlier in the week, you're like, I feel like the stuff we're talking about now is why I never threw the shot well, right?
Yeah.
Because if you land with the ball in front of you in the shot, you're throwing with your triceps and it's not going
Yeah.
anywhere. Somebody that's athletic, you land open, but you cut like we talked about, you have that fake wrap with the left
Yeah.
arm and then you just rip the finish, like, you can kinda make something happen if you're athletic and you're explosive and you can jump and just smack it. So then, like, having to build a rhythm after you have 2 different types of separation, you aren't used to that. Like,
Yeah.
now you have both, and you're just, like, not sure how to unravel them in the right timing. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think that that's something that, like, it's a good problem. Like, one of the things that Joe and I talk about a lot, and, like, Joe had mentioned this in a video that I'd posted or a reel I'd posted, somebody was like, "How do you get faster?" And we're like, "We never talk about that. We never out of my mouth have I said to Joe, 'Yeah, go faster.'" Like, but, like, Joe's fast, right? And, like,
Yeah.
people think Joe throws really fast. Well, he definitely does. We talk about length. Length gives you more time. More time gives you more force production, right? And it's gonna, like, ultimately lead to throwing farther if you're doing it like, if you're executing that properly. So now the thing like, your problem is you're landing and you have all this time to create force through double support at the finish. You haven't done that before.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? And so even, like, from very simply, like, when you're doing a stand throw, you don't know what to do because you're so used to bringing everything together, or it's already in front of you and you're just trying to, like, push the panic button, like, "Okay, how am I gonna get
Yeah.
out of here?" So it's like, it's so foreign for you to have, like, tension set, being back, because when you look at your videos, you're landing in, like, a good position, and you're just not used to feeling that, like, and I think that, like, one of the things I'm sure that people are gonna be like, "Kovacs is gonna teach Joe Brown to throw the discus like a shot put." You know, like, they're gonna be like, like, saying that I'm teaching you to lift too much, and you're not gonna lift. You don't lift the same way that a shot putter lifts. You don't, right? But, like, the problem with you is you haven't learned how to transition up through your legs, the kinetic linking through your legs, through your torso, up into the finish.
Mhm.
You haven't done that yet. So you're not used to even, like, spiraling up through the delivery, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, like, I don't think that you think about the extension the same way as a shot putter does, right? Exactly the same way. Like, you do have to be more of, like, I think you have to be more vertical in the shot put, delivering that than you do in the discus. But like for you, you've never had to get out of your legs in the first place. So we have to kind of overcoach that.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like, I don't want people to get the right idea. Like it's not the same finish as the shot. It's not. Right. But there are things that are happening that are obviously very paralleled to the shot.
Yeah.
But I think that that's the thing, like back to what we kind of talked about earlier, like you're making a lot of right mistakes. Like to me, like when I think about what you're doing right now, I have like very good feelings about it because there's like alignment. Okay. You're not falling all over yourself. You're just rushing the finish. Like the alignment is good. The direction's getting better. I think that there are like some things that you're doing that we're going to need to adjust a little bit, obviously off the back and like, like getting you're kind of wide in the middle, whatever, like shutting that to me is not going to be difficult. The thing that we're working on right now that's like bar none is like working on changing the firing patterns at delivery because you're gonna have a whole lot more range now and a whole lot more time to create force, and you're just not used to that. So we're gonna have to find like John Smith John Smith's word. You gotta find the recipe. So the recipe is like what Joe Brown does, what Joe Kovacs does, what, discus thrower X, Y, and Z does. It's not the same formula. It's
Mhm.
not the same recipe. Like what I'm gonna do with you, I may have never done this before with any discus thrower I've had. Like
Yeah.
maybe you need to throw this tool, or you're gonna throw this, or you're gonna do 10 of these before you do this and this and that. I don't have this is how all my discus throwers do it. Like, I have never been like that. Like, I think
Yeah.
everybody responds differently to different tools. That's the thing I like about the discus. Like, you can throw a pipe, you can throw a ball, you can throw the mini hammers, you can throw a cone, like, you can throw the disc, you can throw heavy discs. Like, there are a lot of options. And so, my thing now that I've seen you in person is it's going to allow me to kind of be creative of like, what's he doing wrong? What can I give him that really exposes the problem so that he has to make an adjustment when he's by himself, that he can feel, okay, I can't even throw this thing if I don't do this and this and that. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
like mini hammers are like in your future. We've discussed that. Throwing like cones and stuff that are long are in your future because you're just going to get a very direct response from them.
Yeah.
There's gonna be no question if you did it right or if you didn't do it right. You know what I mean? And so
Instant feedback.
instant feedback,
Yeah.
100%. So, like, that's the other cool thing I think about you being here and then going back virtually is, like, I have a lot better idea. Like, I thought what I thought you were doing, what you're doing, pretty similar, but, like, just being able to, like, feel kinda like what like, being able to do the stuff where I'm, like, trying to get you to engage here, here, and here,
Mhm.
and, like, actually, like, touching and, like, seeing what you're doing gave me, like, a really good roadmap
Yeah.
of, like, the next like, the gap in between the time I see you next and kinda, like, how we can go from there, but, for me, I would say that, like I mean, I didn't have like I said, I didn't have, like, hardcore expectations, but I think that, like, I've I'm starting to develop expectations because I think that there's, like, investment, you know what I'm saying? And that's what it's making me excited about, like, the potential that, like, can come from this because I think that there are a lot of things that I'm seeing that I know if you clean up are gonna give you really good responses.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna go,
Yeah.
And so, like, not to, like, be like, "Oh, yeah, like, it's gonna go, like, 70 meters," but I know that there are certain things that I'm like, "When you start doing this well, there's definitely gonna be an increase in distance," like and that's to me, that's the fun part, so it's all been it's all been really fun, it's been quite the experience. Obviously, we have, you know, 3 guys here from China, and then you're here, and then the twins, and then Joe, and it's like, it's like a circus, but, I think that it's been a fun week, so
Yeah.
we appreciate you being out here with us and
Yeah.
looking forward to the next time for sure.
That's been super fun.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I've been able to come out here and hang out with you guys.
Yeah, we've had a good time. Everybody enjoyed it, even the twins, and I know Joe really liked having somebody else out here too, like, if Joe's getting like, "Hey, Joe, this, and that," which Joe? Like, exactly which Joe, like but yeah, it's been great. Alright. See you
Alright.
guys. Thank
Bye.
you for watching. See you next time.